talk about how the center of the data is. That's why it's called central tendency. And there's four ways to calculate numbers that talk about the center of the data. And we call them the four M's: mean, median, mode, and mid-range. And the first one is the mean. Let me change this out of red so I'm not like yelling at you. The mean is your average. And you know how to find your average. You just add the numbers up. So if you have four numbers, you would add them up and you would divide by 4. The median is the middle number. So like the median and 270 and between the lanes is the middle, the grassy area. So the median is the middle. Make sure you have your data ordered from low to high or high to low. But if you have a set of data, say this is your set of data. Oops, we do 5 and then 8, and it has to be ordered. This would be your median because you have 5 numbers. If I add another number in there, then my data would have 6 numbers in the data set, and then my median would be in between. If your median lies in between 2 numbers, you just add them together and divide by 2, and your median would be 9. The mode is the one that occurs most often. So remember, your median is your middle, but make sure that you have it ordered from least to greatest or greatest to least. Your mode is the one that occurs most often. This is the one that we use when we're talking about categories or categorical data. You can have more than one mode. You can have no mode. You can have multiple modes. So if you have a set of data like the 3, 5, 8, 9, 10, that has no mode. If I add another 3 in here, 3 is the mode. If I add another 10, you have 2 modes, 3 and 10. So you can have no mode, one mode, or multiple modes. It's most often used when we're talking about categorical data, like most people have brown hair. Most people voted for this candidate. Most people voted for this for prom, what they want the prom theme to be. Most people voted for this for spirit days. So that's what most often means, usually is for categorical data, and that's the mode. So think of MO, MO. The last one that we're going to talk about is mid-range. Mid-range is one that we don't really use much because it's not the greatest measure of central tendency, but it is technically a measure. So it's low plus high, and then you divide by 2. Here's why mid-range is not good. Mid-range is not good because you could have a set of data that goes from like, I don't know, -10, and then the rest of the data looks like this. Okay, here's what the mid-range would be. The mid-range would be -10 plus 5, -5, and then divide by 2. So it would be -2.5. Right, so -5 plus 5 is -5. Divide by 2 is -2.5. It's really not the middle of the data. The middle of the data really is somewhere around here for the median, if you're talking about the median. So the median is 3, the mode is 5, and you're getting -2.5 for a mid-range. So the problem with the mid-range is it's really, really it's calculated by 2 numbers. So it's really affected by somebody that's really, really high or something that's really, really low. So, and if you think about it in test scores, let's say everybody did really great on this test and you have this one person that failed. You're calculating this mid-range from that one single person that failed the test. So it's really affected by highs and lows. So those are your 4 measures of central tendency that we're going to be talking about. The other thing that we need to talk about is all of the symbols for these things, which is on the next page. So remember, a statistic is any characteristic, any number that talks about a sample. So remember, statistic sample. So statistics or sample comes from samples. Parameters come from numbers from a population. So remember, a parameter comes from a population. And you could be talking about the means of both things, the medians of both, but if it's a sample, it's called a statistic, and if it's a a parameter, it comes from a population. Because of that, sometimes they have different symbols, and sometimes we're going to learn through this chapter that they're calculated different ways. They actually have different formulas. So a parameter comes from the Greek alphabet, and the samples come from the Roman alphabet. Some of them have symbols, some of these do not. So the symbol for the mean is X bar, just X with a bar over it. I kind of did that a little sloppy. Let me do that again. Sorry, I'm using this electronic pen. It's kind of hard. The parameter comes from a symbol that looks like that. It's kind of funky U, and we pronounce that mu. And you'll see what it looks like as we're going through, but that's how you pronounce it, mu. All right, median does not have a symbol on the calculator. It's just MED for both. But these two have two different ones for the mean. Mode doesn't even, you can't even calculate it on the calculator. You have to kind of hand do it. Mid-range, the symbol is MR, and you have to hand calculate it. We'll talk about it. Range is R. And people always get these two confused. So let's take a look at this for a minute. Remember, the mid-range that we just went over is low plus high divided by 2. The range is just the spread of the data. So this would be high minus low. These three here are called measures of variation or variability. Those are your central tendency. So these are measures of variability or variation. Call them measures of variation or variability. The 4 M's talk about the center of the data. So this is your central tendency. Right? I'm going to write CT for central tendency. Measures of variation talk about the spread of your data, how widespread the data is. Is the numbers close together or the numbers far apart? And that's what these three things talk about. And we'll talk about that as the chapter goes. Variance is a super important one for the symbols. The variance for a sample is S for sample squared. And for population is the sigma squared. And we pronounce that sigma. So variance would be sigma squared. The standard deviation is really just the square root of that. So whatever you get for this, you just square root it, and it is S. Then you just square root that, and you square root that, and you get that. So there's that sigma. Total means how many numbers do you have. If it's a sample, it's a little n. If it's a population, we use a big N. Another symbol that you really need to know is this symbol here, and that means sum. So sum up whatever you have. And oddly enough, this is also called sigma. And the reason why is this is lowercase sigma and this is uppercase sigma. So you have two different sigmas. But this means to sum. So you probably have seen this, and we're going to talk about this semester. You probably have seen this on the calculator or in some other types of problems. So going forward, you're going to need to know what these symbols are. So this is just a little reference chart for you for when we go into the graphing calculator, because like, for example, these two are calculated different ways depending on whether it's a sample or population, and therefore their symbols are different. Okay, thanks a lot. See you later.